this video, we're going to go over solving radical equations. So we need to review some rules about equations. To solve an equation, we need to isolate whatever variable it is. We do that by doing the opposite of any numbers that are on that side of the equal sign, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing to get rid of those numbers. And whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other side. Here are our rules for solving radical equations. 1. Isolate the radical symbol. That means if there are any numbers on the outside of the radical symbol, you need to eliminate those numbers by doing the opposite. If they're adding 8, you need to subtract 8. If you're multiplying by 2, you need to divide by 2. You need to make it to where there is only the radical symbol on that side of the equal sign and no other numbers on the outside of it. To get rid of the radical symbol, you do the opposite of it. If the index of the radical symbol can't be seen, there's an index of 2, that means you need to square it. It will make the radical symbol go away. Sort of like if you have a plus 8 and you subtract 8, those two cancel each other out. Same thing if you have a radical symbol and you can't see the index, there's an index of 2, that means you need to square both sides. And all the problems that we're going to go over, you're going to have to square both sides. But if you saw an index of 3, you would take the cube of each side. If it had an index of 4, you would take it to the 4th power. And that would eliminate the radical symbol. So the first thing you do is isolate the radical symbol. Then on these, you're going to square both sides because the index on all these problems is going to be 2. Once you square both sides, then you would solve it like you normally would. So let's look at our first example. In this example, there are no numbers on the outside of the radical symbol. That would be our first thing to get rid of any numbers out here. Like if it had plus 1, I would subtract 1 from both sides before I did anything else. Right now, I have isolated the radical symbol. So I've done step number 1, or it's already been done for me. The next thing I need to do is raise to the power of this index. So this is an index of 2 because I can't see it. So the way I'm going to get rid of this radical symbol is doing the opposite of the square root. What's the opposite of the square root? Squaring it. And remember, if I do something to one side, I have to do it to the other side. Squaring this is going to get rid of this radical symbol, and what I have left over is just what's up under the radical symbol, x plus 8. So these two things canceled each other out. The square root and squaring canceled each other out. That's what I wanted. 9 squared, 81. Just like here, I need to get rid of this plus 8. What's the opposite of plus 8? Minus 8. I need to subtract 8 from both sides. Just like up here, those cancel out. Up here, the square root and squared canceled each other out. 81 minus 8, 73. Let's look at this example. Again, there are no numbers on the outside of the radical symbol. That would be what I would worry about first. Now I need to get rid of this radical symbol. Index of 2, the way I get rid of this radical symbol then is going to be squaring both sides. Now square the other side. Remember, in an equation, if you do something to one side, you have to do it to the other. The square cancels out that square root, and I'm left over with what was under the radical symbol. 1 squared, 1 times 1 is 1. And now I need to solve this like a normal equation. What's the opposite of dividing by 8? Multiplying by 8. That means I need to multiply both sides by 8. That means it's going to cancel this 8 out, and I'm left with an x. Is equal to 1 times 8 is 8. Let's look at this example. This is our first example with something on the outside of the radical symbol. So this number right out here, I need to get rid of it first, the way I normally would with an equation. What's the opposite of plus 2? Minus 2. That means I need to subtract 2 from both sides. Bring down the square root of 4x. That cancels out. Bring down my equal sign. 10 minus 2 is 8. I have now isolated the square root symbol. And what's the opposite of taking the square root? Squaring something. Once I get it isolated, that's when I need to square it or raise it to the power of the index. This square root is canceled out by squaring, and I'm left with what was up under there. Square the other side, 8 squared. And now I need to divide both sides by 4. 64 divided by 4, 16. Our next example, I'll look for any numbers on the outside of the radical symbol, and I need to eliminate those numbers first. That means I need to get rid of negative 10. The opposite of negative 10, positive 10. I need to add 10 to both sides. This is eliminated. Bring down my equal sign. Negative 5 plus 10 is 5. I have now isolated this radical symbol. I need to get rid of the radical symbol. The opposite of taking the square root of something is squaring it. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. Just like this was eliminated, what I'm doing here is going to eliminate that radical symbol, and I'm left with what's up under it. I square the other side, I get 25. The opposite of multiplying by 5 is dividing by 5. X is equal to 5. My next example. There is a 2 on the outside of this radical symbol. I need to get rid of it. If a number is right beside the radical symbol, that denotes multiplying. What's the opposite of multiplying by 2? The opposite of multiplying by 2 is dividing by 2. That's how I'm going to get rid of that 2 in front of the radical symbol. Those cancel out. 14 divided by 2 is 7. I have now isolated the radical symbol. I'm now ready to square both sides. Square this side and square the other side. Seven times 7 is 49, and squaring this cancels out that radical symbol. In this example, I've got numbers on the outside of the radical symbol. I've got this number right here on the outside of the radical symbol, and I need to get rid of it. It's not right beside the radical symbol. That means it's not multiplying. This is a positive 8. I need to subtract 8 from both sides to get rid of that 8. 15 minus 8 is 7. This cancels out. I have now isolated this radical symbol. Once I isolate that radical symbol, now I need to get rid of it. The opposite of taking the square root of something is squaring it. If I do it to one side, I have to do it to the other side. 7 times 7 is 49. And squaring the square root simply cancels that square root out, and I'm left with what was up under the radical symbol. Now I solve this like a normal equation. Over here, what do I need to get rid of? Sort of like isolating the radical symbol, I need to isolate this x. I need to add or subtract first, then multiply or divide. I need to get rid of this positive 3. That means I need to subtract 3 from both sides. I need to get rid of that negative 23. How am I going to get rid of that negative 23? The opposite of multiplying by negative 23 is dividing by negative 23. I'm going to move the x over here. I'm going to divide this. 46 divided by negative 23, negative 2. Now, one thing that we're not doing on these that we're going to do later on, because right now we're just getting to where you can solve these, we need to start checking these numbers. We need to start putting these numbers back into the original equation, because not all these numbers are the solution. We're doing our math here to find a possible answer, and then we have to plug it back in later on to see if it actually is an answer, because some of these numbers work and some of them don't. We're using our mathematical knowledge to get a possible answer here, but then I have to plug it back in to check and see if it works. Right now, we're just going through the process of getting this. Our next example. Any numbers on the outside of the radical symbol, I need to get rid of. That means I need to get rid of this negative 6. Opposite of negative 6, positive 6. I need to add 6 to both sides. That means I have 0 left over here, and I have now isolated this radical symbol. How do I get rid of this radical symbol? I need to square it. If I square one side, I need to square the other side. 0 times 0 is still 0. Squaring this over here gets rid of this radical symbol, and I'm left with what was up under there. Now I need to isolate this x. Opposite of negative 3, positive 3. What number is in front of this x right here? That's a negative 1. Opposite of multiplying by negative 1, dividing by negative 1. 3 divided by negative 1 is negative 3. Our next example. Remember, if the number is right beside the radical symbol, that's showing you that you're multiplying. So to get rid of this 9, I need to divide both sides by 9. Those 9s cancel out. I'm left with the square root of x minus 4. 45 divided by 9 is 5. I have now isolated that square root symbol. The opposite of taking the square root is squaring it. I need to do it to both sides. Squaring eliminates that radical symbol, and I'm left with x minus 4 is equal to 25. I need to get rid of this negative 4. Opposite of negative 4, positive 4. In this example, we have two numbers on the outside we need to get rid of. We need to get rid of this 2 and this 5. Just like solving a normal equation, we need to do our adding and subtracting before we do our multiplying. So my first step in this one is to get rid of that positive 5 by subtracting 5 from both sides. Now I need to get rid of this 2. This 2 is being multiplied. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. I need to divide both sides by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. These 2's cancel out. Now that the radical symbol is isolated, I can square both sides to get rid of that radical symbol. 4 squared is 16. And these two cancel each other out. The radical symbol and the square cancel each other out. Now I need to get rid of this negative 4 by doing the opposite. Next example. I have two square root symbols. Again, I need to get rid of numbers that are on the outside. There are no numbers on the outside of these square root symbols. How do I get rid of these square root symbols? I square it. So I'm going to square both sides, and it's going to get rid of both of those square root symbols. Squaring this, you're just left with what was up under the radical symbol. Squaring this, you're going to be left with what was up under the radical symbol. Now I solve this like a normal equation. Which variable is in the wrong spot? This one. I need to get rid of 2x by subtracting 2x from both sides. Bring down negative 5. Negative 1x minus 2x, negative 3x is equal to, this cancels out, 22 over here on this side. I need to get rid of this negative 5. Add 5 to both sides. Bring down negative 3x is equal to 22 plus 5, 27. How do I get rid of multiplying by negative 3? Divide by negative 3. X is equal to negative 9. So let's try one more like this. I've got a square root symbol on both sides and no numbers on the outside. So let me go ahead and square both of these and get rid of those radical symbols. Squaring it simply gets rid of that radical symbol. I'm left with 6x over here on this side. Squaring it on the other side, I'm left with 7x minus 2. I need to get rid of this x in the wrong spot. Subtract 7x from both sides. I get negative 1x is equal to negative 2. I'm not going to write it, but if you need to write a 1 right there, that's fine. Divide both sides by negative 1. X is equal to 2.